Today, I'd like to tell you about two of the scariest moments of my life when I felt like I've needed the most courage. But first, let me tell you how I got there. I was born in Geelong and I grew up in some pretty rough suburbs there. As a boy, I loved to play video games and I loved to read about the planets in the solar system, but mostly I loved actually building stuff with Lego. What I didn't like was playing sport. Sport for me was groups of boys, and I didn't actually feel safe. And most of all, I just hated play fighting. This is something that didn't please my older brother and my father, but it was just who I was. Luckily, I really loved school. I loved to learn, particularly in primary school, with maths and history. But all of that really changed for me when I got to at the high school that I went to. There were two things that you couldn't be. Firstly, a boy who enjoyed school and who was smart, and secondly, a boy who everyone thought was gay. Both of those things made me quite unsafe at the high school that I went to. So I got really good at keeping myself safe, mostly by becoming invisible. A really good day for me was where the bullies completely left me alone because they didn't see me. I spent most of my time at recess and lunchtime actually outside the library because that was outside the window of the principal's office. It was the only place that I felt safe at high school. A really excellent day was the days when the bullies actually didn't come to school, which occasionally happened. It wasn't until I was 19 years of age that I found the first place where I felt I could be gay and safe. At 19, I heard about an LGBTIQA plus group called GASP Geelong, and at the time it was the only LGBTIQA plus group outside of Melbourne in country Victoria. So I wanted to support that and I wanted to give them whatever help I could. I was nervous though. I thought, well, maybe they'll just laugh at me and tell me to go away. I mean, who am I to, offer my support to them? So I remember nervously walking in, and I remember that the two women on the counter at the time said, sure, that's great that you want to volunteer. Come back on Thursday afternoon, that's when the group is. So for 6 months, I came to every single meeting. I set up the rooms, I helped pack up, I stuffed envelopes, I got supplies for the group, anything that I could do, photocopying, whatever, to support the cause. After 6 months, the two women said to me, can we let you in on a secret? And I said, sure. And they said, we actually thought that you only volunteered so that you could get yourself a boyfriend. But you're still here. And I added, well, I still don't have a boyfriend. But they said, you're very serious about this and you're very good at what you do. So would you like 3 hours a week where we pay you to actually help out with the running of the group? And it was like a dream come true. I was being paid to do my dream job. And what that meant is that I got to work in a space where for the first time as a gay man, I was hearing positive messages, for the first time in my life. It absolutely changed my life. The first scary moment I want to tell you about is when I first started working in Geelong schools. I'd listened to young people who were in the GASP Geelong group, and they described to me some pretty kind of rough and tough and horrible experiences that they were having at school. Things like they were being called names, they were being physically threatened, and even sometimes beaten up. But not only was it the students they were having issues with, it was also with some of the teachers as well. So I contacted the schools and said, look, I'm from this support group. What I would like to do is to help your school challenge homophobia, but also I'd like to talk to your students about my group and also what it's like to be LGBTIQA+. Now, most schools didn't get back to me, but one actually did, and it was an all-boys Catholic school. So I was asked to go and speak to the teachers. Now, I'm an atheist, so I don't practice religion, but at the time, to be a gay man going into a Catholic school was huge. So I remember walking into the classroom and I was supposed to talk to 75 teachers. And so my very first time of walking into a school as a professional, my very first time to tell my story and to talk to them about what we could do together in their school, this was what 75 teachers did when I stood up to speak to them. Now, I spoke for about 10 minutes from memory, and I couldn't remember what I actually said because I was so shit scared. I was absolutely, I was hoping that I was going to say something that actually made sense. But luckily, after that presentation, there were 14 teachers who said, we want to work, they told the principal, we want to work with that young man. We want him to help us work with our students around this because this is an issue. So that was a great outcome. But the scary moment was when I actually had to go into a classroom of Year 9 boys. So Year 9 boys in an all-boys Catholic school in a country area. I was told at the time that this was a world first. This had never been done, where an openly gay man went into a classroom of a Year 9 all-boys Catholic school. So I was absolutely shit scared. I can remember I felt sick. I was very, very physically sick. But what I did was something that I want to share with you, is that in that moment, I said, look, I can't change the whole Catholic education system. I can't change the way that these young men think. That's not within my control. But what can I do? I can go in there and I can tell my story. I can answer their questions. I can give them information and not let them, have stereotypes and myths about what gay people are like. That's within my control, and that's what I'm going to do. And so I marched into that classroom, and that's exactly what I did. Now, I didn't know what was going to happen with that. I didn't know that as a result of that class, it led to me writing an educational package for teachers. It led me to writing my first book. It led me to going to conferences. It led me to working overseas with the work that I did. But none of that was on my mind in the moment. And I want you to think about, what are the moments where you might be shit scared? Now, I'm not talking about where you're feeling physically unsafe, okay? That's a different story. I want you to keep yourself safe. But in those other moments where you might be unsure, uncertain, and it's new territory for you, I want you to think about, well, what would be your next step? And that's the only thing that you have to focus on. And now, for the second scary moment I want to tell you about is when I jumped into my openly gay truck called Bruce, and I drove for 266 consecutive days around regional, rural and remote Australia to challenge homophobia one cuppa at a time. Now, when most people heard about my 38-week drive, they thought that one of three things would happen to me. Firstly, that I'd be run out of town with pitchforks. Secondly, that myself or Bruce would be damaged or harmed in some way. Or third, that simply people wouldn't talk to me. Now, that last bit I was worried about. Who was I to think that I could just drive into a country town and start having interviews and doing talks and doing workshops with people around LGBTQIA+ issues? But I was also worried because I didn't know if I had enough money to pay for all of the fuel to actually drive around the country and for all of my food and accommodation, because it was all stuff that I was paying out of my own pocket. But I knew that I had to try, and I was rewarded for that. So I decided that I just need to drive to the first town. I need to talk to whoever will have a chat with me, whoever's going to have a cuppa. And what I found was overwhelmingly around the country, people said, it's about bloody time. It's about bloody time that we actually have these conversations for two reasons. One is that we know that the mental health and well-being of LGBTQIA+ people is suffering. Secondly, we know that there's a whole bunch of LGBTQIA+ people, particularly young people, that feel like they don't belong in our communities. And even if we have some issues, even if we have some phobias and biases, we want every single person in our community to feel like they belong. If that means we have to challenge the way we think and feel, then fine. We need to have that uncomfortable conversation. And so that overwhelming wave of it's about bloody time, this is long overdue as a conversation, was what actually propelled me and got me around the country for those 266 days. So what I'd love for you to think about is what is within your control. What are the things that you can do when you feel shit scared, where you can still put one foot in front of the other? Only one. I don't want you to think too far ahead. What's within your control? And how can you create signs of LGBTIQA plus hope, not only for you, but also the other people, young and old, in your community? Thank you so much for your time.